Before we start, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. The laughter came before the words. A short, twisted laugh. The kind that escapes without permission and wounds before it even becomes a sentence. She felt it first in her stomach, then in her shoulders, finally across her entire face. She pretended not to hear. Pretended it wasn't about her. Pretended so well, she almost believed it herself. Her purse clutched tight against her lap. Her knee pressed against the metal bar of the seat. The bus braking, lurching forward, jerking as if it too were impatient with her presence. "Girl, look at that!" Someone whispered too loudly. The weight of eyes began to press down. Not because everyone was looking, but because many looked and then quickly looked away, like people ridding themselves of a moral inconvenience. She knew this game, had played it before, always lost. When the comment came fully formed, raw, utterly shameless, she didn't cry, didn't respond, just breathed deeply, like someone swallowing something too large to go down smoothly. That's when she noticed. Someone was standing. The man didn't stand quickly. He rose slowly, calmly, with no hero's urgency. First he adjusted his jacket. Then he planted his feet firmly in the narrow aisle. The bus continued moving, but something inside it had stopped. "Funny thing," he said, looking at nothing in particular, as if thinking aloud. Whenever someone laughs like that, they think they're above someone else. Some people smiled uncomfortably. Others rolled their eyes. No one yet knew if this was a defense or just another performance. He turned his face toward the person who had made the comment. "You laughed because you thought no one here would care. Because you learned that humiliation is cheap when the target doesn't react." The bus was too quiet now. Even the engine seemed distant. She didn't lift her head, didn't want to be seen. Being a target was already enough. "But let me tell you something," he continued. "Today isn't about you laughing. It's about who's going to sustain that laughter afterward." His words hung in the recycled air, heavy and deliberate. A few passengers shifted in their seats. Someone coughed. The woman who had whispered first now studied her phone screen with sudden intensity, as if it contained urgent news she'd just remembered. The bus driver glanced in the rearview mirror but said nothing. He'd seen this dance before. The casual cruelty, the public shaming, the silence that was really complicity. Usually it ended with someone getting off at the next stop, carrying their humiliation like extra luggage. But this felt different. The man standing in the aisle wasn't performing outrage. He wasn't virtue signaling. There was something calculated in his stance, something precise in his timing. He stood with the easy confidence of someone who knew exactly how much space he occupied in the world and felt no need to apologize for it. The woman kept her eyes down, her fingers working the strap of her purse, over, under, through, pull tight. A nervous habit from childhood, something her mother had done before her. Her uniform was clean but worn, the kind of uniform that marked her as invisible in the buildings where she worked, the kind that made people look through her rather than at her. Until now. Now everyone was looking. Now she was the center of something she hadn't asked for and didn't want. The man breathed deeply. He didn't smile, didn't shout, didn't make a pretty speech. "This woman," he said, gesturing toward her without touching, without invading her space, woke up today before the sun rose. She took 2 buses to get here. She works cleaning places that you people make a point of dirtying. She supports a household where no one laughs at her. And she still got on this bus without making a sound. He paused briefly, calculated. "I know this because she's my business partner." The impact wasn't immediate. It came in waves. Someone laughed, thinking it was a joke. Stopped quickly. Someone's eyes widened. Someone murmured, "What do you mean?" She lifted her face for the first time, looked at him, confused, almost frightened. "You don't know me," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the engine's rumble. He looked back, now directly at her. "I know enough to realize that no one here had the courage to sit beside you." Absolute silence. The bus had become a confessional, and everyone in it was suddenly aware of their own complicity. The teenage girl in the back who had giggled, the businessman near the front who had smirked, the elderly woman by the window who had tutted disapprovingly. They had all participated, actively or passively, in creating a space where mockery was acceptable. What you all called nothing, he continued, his voice carrying the weight of something more than improvised theater, is the woman who signed with me the contract that saved the company, that today pays the salary of many people on this bus. Some heads lowered, others hardened. Shame began to circulate like a virus, person to person, seat to seat. The woman who had made the initial comment, a younger woman, maybe 30, with careful makeup and a corporate badge dangling from her purse, now stared at her hands as if they belonged to someone else. Her face had gone pale beneath the foundation. She opened her mouth once, twice, but no words came. What could she say? What apology would be adequate? What explanation wouldn't sound like an excuse? An older man near the middle of the bus cleared his throat. I didn't know, he said quietly, though no one had asked for his justification. Of course you didn't know, the standing man replied, his tone patient but firm, like a teacher addressing a failing student. That's exactly the point. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You saw what you expected to see, and that was enough. The bus slowed for another stop. 2 people got off quickly, escaping the uncomfortable atmosphere like smoke from a burning room. No one got on. The driver closed the doors and pulled back into traffic. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor of the bus and emerge somewhere else, somewhere where she wasn't the object of pity or the subject of a lesson. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped her purse tighter, her knuckles pale against the dark fabric. Sir, she said softly, you don't have to. I know I don't have to, he interrupted gently. That's why I'm doing it. Sergeant, there was something in his voice now, something personal beneath the public performance. Not anger exactly, but something close to it, something ancient and tired. The exhaustion of having watched this scene play out 1,000 times, in 1,000 variations, and finally deciding that this time, this particular time, he would not remain silent. Do you want to know what I see? He asked the bus at large, his eyes scanning the faces that had moments ago been so quick to judge. I see people who have convinced themselves that cruelty is a small thing, a joke, a momentary lapse, nothing serious, nothing to feel bad about. He paused, letting the words settle. But cruelty is never small to the person receiving it. And every time you look away, every time you stay silent, every time you participate in making someone feel less than human, you're choosing a side. You're saying, this is acceptable. This is how the world should work. A young woman in the back, college age, with a backpack and headphones around her neck, wiped at her eyes quickly. She'd been one of the ones who looked away, who had seen everything and done nothing. She would remember this moment, he knew. It would surface at random times, while brushing her teeth, while waiting in line, while lying awake at night. She would wonder what she could have said, should have said, didn't say. The seated woman thought this was the climax, that he would help her off the bus, protect her, strike a pose for the crowd. But no, the bus stopped. The door opened. He didn't get off. Now it's up to you, he said quietly, only for her to hear. She stood. Her legs trembled, not from fear, from something new, something that felt like power but lighter, more sustainable, like discovering that you'd been carrying a weight that was never yours to begin with. She looked around, at the dead laughter, at the eyes that now begged for silent absolution, at the faces that had transformed from judges to the judged in the space of 10 minutes and a few dozen words. I don't need to prove anything, she said, her voice steady, clear, carrying to every corner of the bus. You already proved who you are when you decided I had no value. She walked toward the door. Her footsteps were deliberate, unhurried. She wasn't running, wasn't fleeing, was simply leaving because this was her stop, because she had places to be, because her life existed independent of their opinions. Before she descended, she turned one last time. And tomorrow, I'll take this bus again. Because dignity isn't running away. It's occupying space. It's refusing to let someone else's cruelty determine where you're allowed to exist. She stepped down onto the sidewalk. The door closed with a hydraulic hiss. The bus pulled forward, but no one in it left the same, and for the first time on that route, the weight no longer belonged to her. The man who had stood remained standing for another moment, watching through the window as she walked away. Shoulders back, head high, moving through the world as if she owned it. Which, in the ways that mattered, she did. He sat down slowly in the seat she had vacated. It was still warm. Around him, the bus was silent. Not the silence of complicity, but the silence of reckoning. The silence that comes when people are forced to confront the small cruelties they've normalized, the casual violences they've learned to ignore. No one spoke for the rest of the ride. No one made eye contact. No one laughed. The young woman with the corporate badge got off 3 stops later without looking up. The elderly woman who had tutted whispered something that might have been a prayer or might have been an apology to no one in particular. The college student with the backpack pulled out her phone and typed something, deleted it, typed something else, deleted that too. By the time the bus reached its final stop, the passengers dispersed quickly, each carrying something new and uncomfortable. The driver shut down the engine and sat for a moment in the sudden quiet, thinking about all the things he'd witnessed over the years and all the times he'd said nothing. He made a mental note, one he would actually follow through on, to speak up next time, to be part of the solution instead of part of the silence. The man who had stood collected his briefcase and left the bus last. He walked through the city streets with the easy confidence of someone who knew his own value and didn't need anyone else's validation to confirm it. But he also walked with something else now. A kind of quiet satisfaction. Not pride exactly. Something gentler. The knowledge that he had done what needed doing in the moment that required it. He would never see that woman again. Didn't need to. That wasn't the point. The point was that she had walked off that bus carrying herself differently. The point was that everyone who witnessed it would remember. The point was that the next time someone started to laugh at another person's expense, maybe, just maybe, someone would remember this moment and choose differently. That was enough. That had to be enough. Because dignity, he had learned long ago, isn't something you grant to people. It's something that exists whether you acknowledge it or not. The only question is whether you're going to honor it or violate it. Whether you're going to be the person who laughs or the person who stands. Whether you're going to occupy space that makes the world smaller for others or occupy space that makes room for everyone. He had chosen his side a long time ago. And today, on a crowded bus on an ordinary Tuesday morning, he had reminded everyone else that they were choosing to, whether they realized it or not. The woman walked into her workplace, a large office building where she cleaned after hours, and clocked in exactly on time, as she always did. Her supervisor barely glanced at her, as usual. The building's occupants would arrive later and never know her name, as always. But something was different now. She felt it in her chest, in her stride, in the way she held her head. The laughter on the bus hadn't diminished her. The cruelty hadn't made her smaller. She had walked through it and out the other side, and she was still here, still whole, still herself. And tomorrow, as she had promised, she would take that bus again. Not because she had to prove anything, not because she was making a point, but simply because it was her bus too, her city too, her world too. And no one's laughter could take that away. If you like this story, leave a like and subscribe for more.